Tough on crime and low on sweeteners, the Northern Territory budget has been handed down with few surprises as the government continues its no-frills, debt-conscious approach. The Northern Territory recorded an improved debt position, with net debt to hit $11.3 billion by the end of 2025-26, $841 million less than the forecast in last year's budget. Next financial year, the debt will climb to $12.5 billion, $552 million less than previously projected, before reaching a peak in 2028-29. The government says the budget is focused on Territorians' needs, with record spends on health, corrections and police. Treasury says the improved debt position is from higher GST payments from the Commonwealth, as well as higher tax and royalty revenue, although the gains have been tempered by damage caused by severe weather and the global fuel crisis. Our chief political reporter Jack Hislop sat down with the Treasurer Bill Yan a short time ago.
Bill Yan, you've handed down your second budget today, but there doesn't seem to be any new cost of living measures for Territorians. Why is that?
Well, there's quite a lot of money going out for cost of living support for Territorians. We're putting $290 million out there in this budget to support Territorians through these times where we're seeing an increase in household budgets. The biggest spend in our budget is the community service obligation to support Territory families. $2,000 for every Territory family is part of that support to make sure that they're not seeing huge increases in their power prices. Power prices are going up with the increased cost of gas, so we're doing the hard yards to make sure that that is not being passed on to mums and dads.
The community service obligation, though, is an existing policy. Considering how tough Territorians are doing it right now, shouldn't there be something new?
Well, if you look at overall what we're doing, we're stuff out there for back to school vouchers, learn to swim vouchers, free swimming lessons for kids, support for our seniors. We removed the need for inspections on your car. So these are all small things that help Territorians with their cost of living issues. So the money that we're putting out the CSO is a large part of that, and I think it plays the major role in reducing those issues for Territory families.
The NT's in a huge amount of debt. The interest bill's $2.1 million per day. Is that sustainable?
Well, you need to look at the legacy that we were left coming into government. The debt was spiralling out of control, and it's not something you can pull up straight away. So we've started to flatten that debt curve. We're seeing $12.5 billion in debt this financial year, stabilising at around about 13.2 over the next 2 years post that, and then starting to reduce. So we're doing the fiscally responsible work now to start to reduce that debt, and with that, that will reduce those interest payments.
Should you have made more cuts to get that interest bill under control?
Well, you've got to balance up the services that we need to provide to the Territory versus how you pull back on that spending. And I think we've had a very, very good balance in this budget. We're rolling things out the door that Territorians want and expect from us. All that money we're putting out, the $12.7 billion in law and order, the education spend, and of course the $2 billion plus in our healthcare system. These are what Territorians expect. These are services they need every day. So we're very, very focused on delivering that and make sure that Territorians get the services that they require.
Last year you made the decision to go ahead with the Darwin shiplift. It's blown out by another $30 million to $850 million. Surely you have to take some responsibility for this latest blowout?
Well, the blowout that we're seeing and the increased costs for the shiplift, again, are a legacy item left to us by the last government. They signed off on all the contracts and the deeds before we got into government. And we've been working with the contractors, Clough BMD, to make sure we try and maintain those costs. But there was no out for us. There was no out for the CLP. These deals were done before we got there. We could have terminated the agreements, but we would have ended up financially worse off. We're better off now to build the shiplift and back it in, because we know it will be an economic driver for the Territory longer term in that larger maritime precinct.
The feds have given you a huge bucket of money for NT hospitals. Will Territorians notice this in the EDs?
Well, the additional funding fills the gap that the federal government left us for many, many years. The federal government had underspent and underfunded our hospitals for a very, very long time. It's good now to see that $1 billion deal that the Chief Minister managed to get with Canberra. So that tops up that $200 million shortfall in funding for our hospitals. That allows us to have a little bit more flexibility on what we do within our hospitals, because previously we were borrowing that $200 million every year to fund that shortfall.
You're building new prisons. Have you considered building a new Royal Darwin Hospital?
Well, prisons we need right here, right now, today. If you look at the correctional system, it was neglected by the previous government. Prison numbers were increasing. They were holding people in watch houses. There was no plan to put additional beds into our correctional services. That's something that's much needed, and we're doing that work as part of the Correctional Services Master Plan. The Darwin Hospital is another piece of work. I think if we're going to look at a new hospital, that'll be a partnership with the Commonwealth if we're going to go down that road.
Bill Yan, thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Social services and economists have had a mixed reaction to the NT budget so far. While they've praised the emphasis on infrastructure spending, they've also lamented the lack of focus on the root causes of crime and inequality.
With the spotlight on law and order, social services have little to celebrate in this year's budget.
It's the glue that actually holds the NT together is the community and social sector, and the way that the funding is going, we're eroding continuously the amount of services that can be provided.
They say the government could be investing in measures which reduce the initial need for health and crime spending, like social housing and rehabilitative services.
There's a huge health spend, which is great, it is needed, but if we look at some of the reasons that people are presenting to our emergency departments, it's for entirely preventable illnesses, which are the result of living in overcrowded conditions, which are absolutely everywhere in the Northern Territory.
We're seeing investments in this budget into rehabilitation when people are in jail. We're saying that's too late. It's not the right investment. It's important to invest when people are in jail, but the best investment is earlier.
It's not all bad news, with some finance experts praising strong infrastructure spending in this year's budget. They're concerned, however, that most of that comes in the form of one-off spending and that the budget fails to contribute to long-term economic growth.
Immediate policing needs are important, but at the same time we need to also spend money on providing hope and employment and pathways to these young people, especially in the remote and regional communities for the future. So that's not what is happening in a big way.
The Northern Territory opposition will provide their budget reply tomorrow. Joseph Hathaway-Wilson, ABC News.